Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We're back for another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. Russ, get us started with some pre-show.
Yeah, so yesterday was the MLB draft, and admittingly the hardest draft on earth because you were trying to project high school players, prep school players. They haven't gone any higher than that, most likely when you're getting them. Some have played a year of college, and that's all you have to go by. And yesterday, the Mets took a third baseman, last name of Batty, which is a good baseball name. And the issue with that is he is 20 years old.
Okay.
Then, of course, comes the automatic criticism, though you've never seen the player before, because he's older than you expect to be in high school.
Okay.
And so, again, I flinch at that the same way with hockey. It's like, Nick Abruzzese is a 20-year-old in the NHL draft, right?
Right.
Does that mean you shouldn't take him? No. Because if he looks good right now and he's doing everything that checks off on the box for you,
right?
Why wouldn't you do it? Are you just going to say, well, he's just dominating the talent he's playing against, so I have no interest?
Well,
no,
but I know this because I asked this question when we were talking to other people on the weekend at the Combine, is a guy like Brett Legion, who played in the WHL last year. He's a big kid, 6'4", I think 220, and had a great year this year. I think it was 89 points. But the thing is, and he's 20, so he's doing this against 16, 17, 18-year-olds. So you have to sort of mitigate the achievement in terms of how many points he scored. Now I know that he got moved from one WHL team to another, so the opportunity is greater. But you also have to consider that he's bigger, stronger, and older than his competition. And how does that factor into where he slots in the draft? I mean, teams have started to be more open to drafting overagers. I know the Leafs over the last 2 or 3 years have done that. Other teams are following suit because they have more of more accurate indicator of what the player is going to be because they're a little older. But it's tough to gauge how good they are based on the fact that they're playing against younger competition mostly.
Right, and that's why they have scouts for that. And many thought, hey, this kid who happens to be a first third baseman the Mets have drafted in the first round since David Wright, had the best bat in the draft. So if you, Mike Ogello, have a chance to draft this kid and you're up 12 and you feel like he's the best bat in the draft, are you not taking him because he's 20? That's my question to you. Because I
would take him. The only thing that would be a consideration for me is, can I sign him? And in Major League Baseball, if you can't get him signed, he goes back in the draft, just like in the NHL. But in the NHL, it's after 2 years. In baseball, I think it's a year, right?
Year.
Yeah. So
until the next year, like a full calendar year.
Right. So now, interestingly, in sticking with baseball for a second here, once the draft started, the compensation for signing a free agent ended. Right. And now all you're hearing now is Craig Kimbrell and Dallas Keuchel and who's going to sign them. And the thing that, I would be in favor of the Yankees signing Keuchel because they have some injuries in their rotation. Paxton's just coming back from a knee injury. Sabathia is, pretty old. Severino is not a guarantee to come back. The thing is that this guy, even though they're saying he's been pitching simulated games all this time, I don't care if he is. He's not pitching against competition, and he hasn't pitched against major league hitters in 8 months. That scares me, and I think it should scare any team that's considering signing him.
I don't think it should scare him enough. Like, literally, simulated games at least mean his arm's in shape, and you don't have to send him to extended spring training in rookie league. Like down where the team's headquartered, so they start from scratch, right? You're not doing that. He's not starting from scratch. So literally, if you get a player like this, whether it's Kimbrell or it's Keuchel, you know what? You let them have 2 minor league starts or a couple of minor league appearances. They look good, you bring them up. Like, it's on them. I'm not worried about it. I think they can cruise through that. I'm fine with that. I think they probably can, to be honest.
Yeah, and I don't know what the salary is going to be, but I heard some talk about like 16, 17 million dollars for, and that would be prorated for the season. But
right, that's the whole thing. So if it's Keuchel 17 million, turns into like 12, and Kimbrough 11 million, what does it turn into like 8, something like that. So I mean, you're paying more for guys that barely play sometimes making that.
Yeah, and with pitchers though, I mean, all I can say is that to bring it back to hockey again, you see the effect of not participating in spring training or training camp and a couple months into the season on how that happened with William Nylander and how that affected his play.
But hockey's much more demanding.
I'll grant that. I'm just saying the layoff, the fact that he wasn't active. And, I was the one who asked the question of Babcock, shouldn't he play in the American Hockey League? And he out of hand just dismissed it and said no, there was no thought of it. And I think in the end he would have benefited from playing a couple weeks in the American Hockey League. Maybe it would have gotten him off on a better start in the NHL, and in the end he got off to a terrible start and it never got much better. And now I think Nylander is somebody who could potentially get traded this summer because of cap reasons. So
all right, but let me ask you this. You missed the last game of the year. Next year, when you start up in bowling, what did you do in the offseason to get ready for that bowling? Like, why would I even want you on my team?
Well, I'm a finely tuned athlete, so. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, June 4th, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm the finely tuned Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, we have a tie Stanley Cup, now 2-2, heading to Game 5 in Boston on Thursday. A 4-2 victory for the St. Louis Blues over the Bruins. Russ, to my mind, this was the most entertaining of the 4 games in the series, maybe because it was, I think, the most physical. I mean, these guys were flying around. There were some checks thrown in this game, and there was some skill as well. But I think physically, this was the most out there of the 4 games.
Sure. I felt like the Blues played the closest to what I expect the Blues to play most games in that one. Ruby said they were calm, so that was good. So he was right. Although I think he said that before every game in the Stanley Cup, if I remember. But that's all right. They did what they were supposed to do. He made some adjustments. Remember, we talked about Craig Berube making adjustments. He did that. Sanford actually paid some dividends. Certainly Dunn, but Dunn played about the amount of minutes I thought, and honestly, helping on that goal was good, no question. But I didn't think his contribution at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game, were the same. He's not going to be the same. He's still going to be better than Bortuzzo, but he's not going to be the same.
Right, and Alex Pietrangelo played almost 30 minutes. It was a desperate game. They were in a desperate straits. They needed to win that game to stay in the series. If they go behind 3-1, they probably don't come home for Game 6. So, I mean, desperate times require desperate measures.
Let's point out a big obvious, though.
Yeah.
A big obvious is when you have Zdeno Chára out, sitting on the bench, not talking, so we're pretty sure it's a broken jaw. Eck thought so before most, and a lot of people are talking about it.
Yeah.
I felt like, there's something going on there because he was awfully still on the bench and he wasn't saying a word. Yeah. And, so I'm going to go broken jaw or something fractured jaw, something hairline fracture, something like that, right? But him and Grzelcyk aren't in the lineup.
Right.
And that's massive. Like, if you take out 2 of the top defenders in the Blues lineup, you're going to have a problem. You saw with just Dunn out what it would be. The fact that Chára wasn't there at key times in that third period, that's an adjustment now that Boston's going to have to make if he doesn't play next game, because that's where he was desperately missed on the penalty kill and late in that game.
Yeah, I'm not sure about broken jaw. I was thinking at least 2 or 3, maybe even 4 teeth knocked out because, he was spitting out blood, and usually if it's a fracture of a jaw, unless it breaks the skin. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm just playing one on a buzzcast. But I just think that it's possible it's not a broke. If it's teeth, it's just if basically it broke off 3 or 4 teeth, he's going to be in immense pain. They probably. I don't know if they could wire his jaw shut in the locker room. I don't think they have a dentist with them. They may have a doctor. Yeah, so I mean, maybe he was just, he was keeping his jaw closed because of the pain. I'm sure he was given something to relieve the pain.
Yeah.
He seemed a little out of it, and that's probably why the doctor said he can't go on the ice, because if they administer like a heavy dose of pain medication, then he doesn't have all of his.
No, but they made a good point. Like if there was a too many men on the ice penalty, he could have served it.
Yes, that's true.
So you at least, then you're not losing anything.
And he was trying to provide moral support to the team. Yeah. It was a close game. He's the captain. I mean, nobody wants to see anybody get hurt. And it was not a purposeful play. He just gets hit in the face, in the jaw area, and whatever happened. Now the question is whether he can play. They're lucky in the sense that there's an extra day here, and that game 5 is on Thursday. But I have to say, like, really, St. Louis stepped up physically and I think emotionally as well. And the move of Sanford to that second line with O'Reilly.
That was a good move.
Yeah, Sanford is not a very skilled player, but he's a high energy player, and he was throwing his body around.
Well, O'Reilly started out that game like a house on fire, and we have to give him all the credit because he really helped lead the early charge. The one play that I didn't like, and again, this is where the Bruins will have to make an adjustment, is the fact that Tarasenko got in there for like an open shot. Now, partially big credit to him for seeing that opening and knowing where the puck's going to be. But, man, that was a devastating goal. So, hey, good win for St. Louis. Their actual first win ever in a Stanley Cup game.
Yeah.
Great for them.
Well, first win at home in 52 years. Yeah. And I'll tell you something, and I know that you've talked about him for more than a few years. And I remember when he first came up to the NHL, and I think I saw him once or twice playing against the Marlies. Barbashev he is transformed. He is a house on fire. Him and Sundqvist. I mean, you talk about how, teams have to have effective fourth liners. Well, Sundqvist and Barbashev, I mean, they're pains in the ass to play against. I mean, that's what you need from depth forwards, is make a difference. If it's not scoring, then physically. And they're just throwing their bodies around with reckless abandon.
Yeah, I agree. And Barbashev always was a guy that would do that. He always, even when he was a top scoring type, would always throw his body around. He enjoys it. He's like a mini Ovechkin in that way. He enjoys that part of the game. So they have found a good role for him since he's not scoring like the way he used to. Mm-hmm. And so, you know what? Good for him. I mean, that's making the adjustment, and that's smart by just the way they're using him. I give him a lot of credit.
Yeah, and now so game 5 is on Thursday. I mean, obviously the big question will be whether Chára will play or not. If Chára doesn't play, then you're talking about, because Connor Clifton's already in the lineup. John Moore was in there to replace Grzelcyk. You're talking about Steven Kampfer or Ukko Vakanainen. I know I
would put Vakanainen over Kampfer.
I mean, that's a pretty pressure situation.
It is, but this kid plays amongst men overseas. Yeah. How good did he look before he got concussed with the Bruins in the regular season? He looked
pretty good. Yeah,
he's a good sized guy. He's got good fresh legs. Can get the puck out of the zone. It's not like you're asking him to play a ton of minutes. You're probably asking him to play 12 minutes. I would rather have that than Steven Kampfer, who will check a few guys, but can really make a boneheaded play. And
it's going to happen, though. They're going to load more minutes on McAvoy and Marleau and Krug. And I have to say, boy, Charlie McAvoy is going to make big money this summer because, I mean, Russ, when he started, and I know that you get acclimated to the NHL after a year or two and you become more comfortable. When he was with the Bruins earlier in his career, he was impressive, but he wasn't that physical. And he, in that game last night, I mean, there was a couple shifts where every time a Blues player tried to come into the zone, he stood up at the blue line and checked the guy, basically shoved him in the face or shoved him in the shoulders. I mean, boy, is he going to make a ton of money.
Oh, he is. I mean, again, I think people never realized how good he was even heading into the draft, even after his first year. He just keeps getting better, Mike. And the more experience he gets, the better he gets. I mean, the biggest thing about him is nothing really phases him. The bigger stage doesn't phase him. Hockey is hockey for this guy, and it slows down for him, and he skates great, and he doesn't make dumb plays. When do you see Charlie McAvoy make like this one where you say, oh, wow, that was bad?
Very, very, very rarely.
Well, let's give a lot of credit to Brandon Carlo, because I also think he has gotten marginalized over the last year because he plays with Chára. Like, without Chára, he was fantastic. You saw him clearing out the crease.
Yeah.
He is a workout warrior. Like, this is a guy that is one of the last to get off the ice. This guy works out a ton. He skates a lot. He's got physical gifts, and he also can skate the puck really well. And I think people have sort of said, well, you know, Chára takes care of his end for that. But it's more than that, and I think Carlo showed that too.
Yeah, and I thought the most hilarious moment, and then we'll move on to other news. The most hilarious moment of the game last night was, you know, Brad Marchand being Brad Marchand and going. I think there was a whistle. He's coming around the net, and he sticks Binnington with his stick right on his pad, and Binnington flops like he'd been shot by Lee Oswald. Yeah, it's bad on both ends. The flop I don't like. But I also don't like this gamesmanship from Marchand, because what he's trying to do is get somebody to respond and somebody to punch him in the jaw or bop him in the nose or something like that. And, you know, be one of the best players in the league. You don't have to be a freaking rat every single moment of the game. And so you know what? Someday somebody's going to catch that guy, and a lot of people aren't going to feel sorry for him.
I'll tell you what is going to happen. One day a goalie is going to respond to him doing that in the wrong way. Goalies are getting bigger and stronger and more physical every moment. He's got to watch himself, because, you know, in the old days, I get it. You could piss off the goalie. You could trip him. What was a goalie really going to do to an everyday player? Most of those goalies weren't that strong. Even if they fought, they weren't that strong. Now,
well, I mean, Hextall took the baseball swing of Kent Nielsen. So,
right.
You know, so, and we know the late Ray Emery could fight, and you know, Scott.
That's what I'm saying. There's more of those kinds of guys now than the other, and so Marchand doing something like that, there's always going to be payback for that. But the Blues were smart, because they had taken a lot of dumb penalties, and they at least heeded the coach's warning by not getting mixed up in that.
Yeah. All right. Now, during the game, there was some news that broke, and I think it's sort of a precursor of what we're going to be dealing with on the Buzzcast for, you know, the next, I'd say, 5 to 6 weeks, which is, I mean, right now, before the draft and before the existing contracts expire on the 30th of June or July 1st, you're going to see probably more than a few trades of expiring contracts, unrestricted free agents for something, for a draft pick. And we saw the first of those last night, where the Philadelphia Flyers traded a 5th round pick I believe it was a 2019 5th round pick to the Winnipeg Jets for the basically exclusive negotiating rights to Kevin Hayes. You know, now they have Hayes on the books. You know, Philadelphia could accommodate that because they have a ton of cap space. But this is basically, here's a 5th round pick to be able to talk to Kevin Hayes for the next 3 weeks to see if they can get him locked up on a long-term deal. Now, everything, Russ, that was reported yesterday said they really hadn't talked much to Kevin Hayes. They may have, you know, they would have had to ask permission to Winnipeg to talk numbers, but they hadn't really talked. They now are looking at just, you know, negotiating with his agent. There's a connection there between Alain Vigneault, who coached Hayes in New York, and Hayes. So, and we know that the Flyers would be looking out for possibly a number 2 center behind Couturier. I mean, what do you think the odds are that they get Hayes locked up?
I would say 70%. I would give it a 70%. I think there's a better than good chance. I think Kevin Hayes has been a guy that, let's face it, he's always wanted top dollar. That's why Chicago traded him.
Right.
The Rangers did negotiate with him, if you remember, before they put him out on the market. They were talking to him, and I guess it never got to a point where they felt like it was the right number. He's an interesting guy. He definitely broke through with Alain Vigneault, and then some will say did a little better after him. That's fine. But that's also because he had to. There weren't as many players on the team. I can't hang it all on Vigneault, but I know the fans want to. Look, end of the day, Vigneault knows how to use this guy. He will definitely get power play time. Will he get first power play time? Maybe not. That team's got a lot of guys on the power play, but definitely second power play time.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll get the second center spot. They'll move Nolan Patrick to the third center spot. And if they get him, it's great because I think people don't realize that he's got better than average speed. He's a big guy with he's got some dangle in his game. He could do some things in open ice. He's a good playmaker. He has really good vision. Does he have momentary lapses? Sure, but not as many as when he did years ago. So at this age, I really like him, and I think this is a good pickup for them if they can make him, get him signed, because it's not giving up assets, and it's maybe not, paying the Matt Duchene sort of price to fill a position of weakness right now, and it is weakness until Nolan Patrick proves otherwise. So,
well, one way or the other, the Flyers were going to end up spending more on their number 2 center than they're currently spending on their number 1, because Couturier is making 4.1, I think it was, on a long-term deal. And, we sort of debated last night what we thought was, what it would take to get Hayes signed. And, they're not going to sign him for 8 years, although, they couldn't, even though if they traded for his rights, because you'd have had to trade him before, you had to trade him before the deadline to offer him the 8-year deal. But they can offer him 7 years. But I can't perceive that they're going to sign him for 7 years. I would probably say it's going to be 5 or 6. And I think we're probably talking in the range of maybe 6 to 6.5.
Yeah, I think 6.5 by 6, and you get them. I think what people have to realize is when you do trade the rights to a player, yes, that team feels like they have a very good chance of signing him, but that player knows, hey, if I'm going to this team, I'm not hitting free agency. So now this team needs to give me something that I may not have been able to get on free agency, whether that's another year, whether that's an extra $500,000 a year, because I'm now giving up the chance to do that,
right?
So they can get me. So they're never going to get a guy like that on a discount unless the guy has always wanted to play there his entire life, like maybe Trouba in Detroit.
Yeah, they're going to have to pay market. They're going to have to pay market value. There's no discount here.
Right.
You're going to have to pay him like he was a UFA. All you're doing is you spent that 5th round pick to talk to him 3 weeks early. That's
keep everybody else out of it. That's all.
Right. Okay, so we were chatting about this, so I think it's probably worthy of chatting. We mentioned a little bit about Patrick Marleau yesterday, and right. Okay, so there you go. It was later than usual.
No, because I had done it correctly at first, and then my computer dropped it, so I had to go back into it.
Okay. We saw the report on the weekend from Nick Kyprios regarding potential teams and destinations for Marleau, who appears open to being traded to the West. His family is returning to Northern California. He's got a year left in the contract. The Leafs would like to clear the cap space, and I think, my feel is, Russ, is that the Leafs, I think, will trade a prospect. They will take. I think they'll take back salary. Now, my feeling is the way that they're going to try to do this, and there might be interested teams out there, is they will take back a player who's making less AAV, like an Alec Martinez, just to use as an example. I'm not saying it's impossible, but Alec Martinez, the total is he's 2 years at $4 million. That's $8 million.
Right.
Whereas Marleau is 1 year at $6.25. Martinez is younger, so the Leafs are going to have to give up something more than just Marleau. I mean, they're going to have to pay the Kings, but the Kings are getting cap relief off of that going forward. And there's been some talk about Alec Martinez not being them wanting to sort of move on from him, along with some other the veteran players who made up their core group from the Cup winners a few years ago. Ray Ferraro was on TSN radio in Vancouver. He does a daily spot. And I know that Peter contacted us and told us that they were talking about this on TSN radio in Vancouver this morning about the Canucks taking on Marleau. Now, the Canucks have a ton of cap space, but the intimation from Ferraro was for the Canucks to take on Marleau, the Leafs would have to trade them a young roster player, and the guy he specifically mentioned was Connor Brown.
Right.
But the hosts who are interviewing him, quickly moved to guys like Andreas Janssen. I'll tell you right now, the Leafs are not trading Andreas Janssen to facilitate the move off of Patrick Marleau. I think they'll give up prospects. I think they'll give up a draft pick next year. I don't think they're giving up a roster player unless it's a roster player that they're willing to move. And I don't think they're willing to move Andreas Janssen or Kasperi Kapanen to gain cap relief. Those are pieces that they could move to bring back players that help them, but not for cap relief.
Right. Well, I mean, there's other ways to gain cap relief off of this too. If they deem he just can't play anymore, and they might, I know you say he's got a little left, but let's say they look at it and say, you know what, this is really hampering us. They could just send him to the AHL and they'll get some cap relief off of his number.
He's got a no move. He can't.
Well, he's got no move. Okay.
Marleau. Now
that was really dumb. Yeah, that was dumb. Giving an old guy a no move.
Well, I mean, it's a 35 and over deal, so it doesn't really matter. There's no way to wash that contract.
Well, you can't wash it, but even 35 and older, I could send a guy down to the minors. Matt Molson.
Sure. Yeah. But if you give him no move on top of it, yeah. And he wants to move. Unless they could send him to the Marlies and then transfer him to the San Jose Barracudas.
Right.
That's he's not going down to the American Hockey League.
No, he won't.
So it's a prideful guy, and again, he scored 16 goals last year. He's not the player that he was the previous year, but is he still an NHL player, and is he still a pretty decent one? Yes.
Well, my basic point is what you're saying is fair, but if you could start next year and the calendar's moving on him, Father Time isn't slowing down for him.
Sure.
What if he's an 8-goal player next year? It's possible. Like he could come in and his legs could be shot.
And that's why if you're a team like LA, who I think is looking more to clear long-term cap space,
right?
You're taking the hit. I mean, the LA Kings are not competing and are not contending for a playoff spot next year unless they make radical changes. I really believe that they've got.
Hold on, I have to preface this because Lee James said the Leafs will take Virtanen back.
Virtanen's a good player.
They are not doing that. He's now a key player for them.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you two names that if it's a Vancouver deal that I think the Leafs would take, and I think Vancouver would be willing to move on from. One is Chris Tanev.
Right.
Chris Tanev is making $4.45 million next year, and then he's a UFA. And he's again for the third season in a row. He's played, I think, around 50 games. So he's missed 30 with an assortment of injuries. The guy simply can't stay healthy. But I think the Leafs, because of their dearth of right-hand shot defensemen, I think they would take him on. And
Sports Science will have him playing like 1.25 games every third game.
Right, he'll play every time Kawhi Leonard plays. Right. So Tanev is one, and the other one is Brandon Sutter. Now Brandon Sutter's got a couple years left. I think he's making close to $4 million. But again, I think it would be worth it for the Leafs. You get the cap relief. Maybe Brandon Sutter allows you, if you think he can stay healthy, to maybe trade Nazem Kadri and he'd be your third line center, which I think when he's healthy, he's capable of playing. But that's the type of move I'm talking about here, where the team is getting some cap relief. And if it's Chris Tanev for Marleau and the Leafs put in a draft pick or a prospect, then I don't know where Chris Tanev is in terms of his worth as a Canuck, simply because he can't stay healthy and he's being paid close to $5 million a year. They got to re-sign Edler. They got Quinn Hughes coming. They're going to be in the Carlson sweepstakes supposedly, and if not him, then other defensemen as well. So I mean, I think those are possibilities, but you're not getting Andreas Janssen or Kasperi Kapanen for cap relief. It's asinine.
That won't happen.
Okay.
Mike the DM will just hang up on him like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we stop. I mean, honestly, it's like I'm just expressing like the fact that if I'm a general manager, and I'm never going to be, but if I'm a general manager and a general manager,
I don't know why. It seems like you'd be a great one.
Thank you. If I'm a general manager and somebody else is calling me up and he's like, "Well, I'll take Patrick Marleau off your hands," and I say, "Okay, well, what are we talking about here?" "Well, I want Andreas Janssen." Click. It's over. That's
after the click, you would intercom your secretary and say, please don't interrupt me with that guy with any calls ever again.
No, I wouldn't do that. But I wouldn't do that. I would before hanging up on his ass. I would say, well, I don't think that's realistic. I would, give you a second round pick and, take some salary off your hands that way. But I'm not giving up an NHL ready asset for you to take $6 million off my hands. And if that doesn't, tickle his fancy, then okay, talk to you later. Have a good one. I'll see you in Vancouver. So, okay. Some news and notes here, and then we'll take some questions in the chat. The Panthers hire 3 assistant coaches for Joel Quenneville, old former Hawks and former St. Louis Blues assistant with Quenneville, Mike Kitchen. That wasn't a shock. Andrew Brunette and Derek McKenzie, the former captain of the Panthers, were named assistant coaches. So, veteran staff. I'm just curious, Russ, is to see what this team looks like on, say, July 15th, because, we know that they're going to be in on Panarin, but we don't know whether Panarin's going to go there or the Islanders or the Rangers. We know that they might be in on Bobrovsky. If they are, then we don't know what's going to happen with Luongo or Reimer. There's a lot of what ifs there. And it's going to be interesting to see what Dale Talon and what Quenneville do over the next month or so.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I don't think Reimer's movable. So I think they're going to have to live with that. I still would try the Luongo back to Vancouver thing. I would. And if I think I could get Bobrovsky. Or, you know what? I'm just going to roll with the 3 goalies. Reimer, guess what? You're down in the minors. That's it. I just worst case scenario, I'm paying too much money for that. But if that's what I have to do, that's what I have to do. The cap will go up a little bit. If I have to move another player out, I'll move another player out. They'll have to do something if they want to get a top flight goalie and really become a contender. They're just not going to be in great cap position because of a guy like Reimer. But whatever. I mean, they can get past that.
Reimer's got this upcoming season and one more year, $3.4 million. My assertion is that he's no longer a reasonable 1B. I think he's a backup now, and that price as a backup is way too expensive. If they buy him out, and I'm just looking at right now at the salary, how it was dispersed. He's $6.2 million for the next 2 years. It would be 2/3 of that, which would be 4 or like a little over 4 divided over 4 seasons. That's a $1 million cap hit. He's a buyout candidate.
Yeah, they can buy him out. You hate to do it because he's a goalie, because then someone would hire him for the minimum.
And honestly, Russ, I think if he's bought out, or if Florida ate half the salary rather than spreading it over 4 years. If they ate half the salary, his cap hit would be $1.7 million for 2 more years. I think a team that might be interested in him is the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think they'll buy him out. I think what they'll do is they'll get Bob regardless. They'll try and move Luongo. If they can't, hey, you know what? They'll roll with the 3 because Luongo always gets hurt too. So I think they'll just have to do that.
Yeah, well, if they sign Bobrovsky, then they're going to have to. I mean, the only thing that trading Luongo, if that means Luongo is not going to play anymore and they just trade his contract to prevent the cap recapture, then, I don't think Luongo wants to go anywhere other than Florida. Do you think he wants to be the veteran backup who tutors Thatcher Demko?
I think he would do it if he realizes he'll never play in Florida.
Right.
Well, that way he could play.
Right.
I think is it ideal? Sure. No, it's not.
Yeah, and then again with Panarin, the talk has been, and we heard, and I don't understand this. Jonathan Huberdeau is one of the best young forwards in the league, but there was a lot of talk before the deadline that they were looking to move out Huberdeau. Purportedly, if they were going to get Panarin, then they would move out Panarin, or they move in Panarin and move out Huberdeau, which it's like I would think that the guy that they're going to move out, if they're going to move out anybody, it'd be Hoffman.
Yeah,
because you got Huberdeau locked up on a long-term deal at a fairly reasonable cap hit, and you can't. and the cap hit is 6.2, but for another, it's more than that. Hold on. It's 5.9. It's 5.9 for the next 4 years. So you got term there, but it's quality term. And he's a quality player. So I don't know what the anxiousness would be to trade Huberdeau. And I don't know if that's connected to Panarin or not, but maybe that's the sort of give and take there. You get Panarin, and then you don't need Huberdeau, or you can use Huberdeau to get something else that you need.
Yeah, I do think that's what they would do. I think Huberdeau would be that guy, and they can get something else they need. They could get something else on the blue line. It's not like their blue line's perfect. So do that.
Now this, I read this just before the show, and I'm puzzled. And I don't even think it's a long shot. I think it's a pipe dream. But I respect Don Brennan from the Ottawa Sun, so and it could be based on things that he has heard. But his report today that Erik Karlsson would be inclined, or he'd say more inclined, to consider the Ottawa Senators' offer. I'm sorry. I can't see Erik Karlsson going back to a team that is 2 or 3 years away from, and this was said by the owner, 2 or 3 years away from contending for a playoff spot.
Who is putting out this report?
Don Brennan from the Ottawa Sun, who's a veteran reporter. He's basically saying that, he doesn't think Karlsson's going to get the long-term deal that everybody.
He doesn't want to be in Ottawa. That's obvious. Why in the world?
Well, one of the reasons that he stipulated was his wife is from Ottawa and she's homesick.
Okay,
but
it's still
I know. I mean, but honestly, I put Ottawa as like I'm not saying he's going to Buffalo or Toronto or Arizona or something like that, but I think Vancouver, the Rangers, the Panthers, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think there's like 6-7 teams that are more likely that he goes to than the Ottawa Senators, even Montreal.
Just think about this logically, right? Logically, and I get it. It's nice to write in Ottawa that, hey, Erik Karlsson might come back. He's not coming back. If his wife is that homesick, she'll have a home there, and he'll play somewhere close by where he can make the playoffs like Montreal, and he just won't make the kind of money he's going to make. He could work it out. Erik Karlsson's got a way of, some gravitas here where he could sort of carve out a little path for himself. So if he goes to Ottawa, there goes the rest of his playoff career. He's not going to do that. It's not going to happen.
We're going to take some questions in the chat in a minute, but I just wanted to say this because I saw this on Twitter last night, and I am not advocating any kind of violence when it comes to people in the stands at games. But and we've seen this gentleman on social media more than a few times be a tool, and the guy named Mike Portnoy, who works for Barstool Sports, and he was apparently in the stands at Game 4 with a friend of his who was wearing Blues gear, and somebody behind him threw something and hit him. It didn't hurt him or anything like that, but I don't know if it was food or a cup or something like that. And then he made some big deal of it on social media. Well, honestly, if you're recognized and you're him, and you've been spewing the stuff that you've been spewing on social media, then what the hell do you expect?
Yeah, I mean,
really,
it's still not right that the person threw anything.
Exactly.
But he can't act shocked that it happened.
Yeah,
not when you have that masshole attitude that he has online, that persona. Yeah. That's what happens nowadays. Have you not noticed the world?
Yeah, and it's not exclusive to Boston. I'm sorry, there are jackass fans in every fan base.
Right.
So, but honestly, if you're a fan of an opposing team and you sort of mind your own business and your P's and Q's, you're not going to get abused. More, I would say, Russ, if you're just we've talked about Mets and Yankees and things of that nature, but if you're just there, nobody's going to really bother you too much.
No, nobody's going to bother you. They're not throwing anything at you just for wearing the opposing gear. in
Right.
St. Louis. It's
Now,
not happening.
Now, if you act like a nozzle, if you act like a douchebag, and
Yeah.
you're like, then you're gonna, and you're like in a vocal minority, then you're asking for it.
He got identified, and that person didn't like him, and that's what happens. I mean, it's unfortunate, but you know what? Again, how many times do these guys need to do the rounds and just push that really low-lying mentality, low-lying fruit, lowbrow mentality? Like, come on.
Yeah, lowest common denominator mentality. It's like, I mean, I don't know if it has to do with the political arena and the way people are acting in that, and that they think it's okay to do that because the president acts that way. Well, aspire to something better.
Right.
It's like be a little more classy than that. And he was impugning the classiness of the St. Louis Blues fans. And I'm like, okay, you're one to talk.
Right.
Anyway. Okay, let's take a few questions in the chat. And by the way, another little news and note here. I don't know if we mentioned it on one of the shows, but there was a brawl at the end of one of the Calder Cup final games.
Oh, Mike, it's Dave Portnoy, not Mike.
Dave Portnoy, I'm sorry. I apologize. You can spew hatred towards me since I got your name wrong. Curtis McKenzie, veteran AHL forward who played for Texas last year, playing for Chicago now. He got suspended for Game 3 for being in a skirmish at the end of Game 2, where apparently he punched a player several times while the player was down. So, that's what happens. Okay, let's take some questions.
All right. Let's see. Goalie FP wants to know, do we think there'll be a lot of draft day trades? I do. I think they'll I know there'll be teams talking. I think the Flyers are possibly going to be in on something. I think the Leafs could possibly be in on something. I think
let's ask and see if the person will respond. Do you mean trades involving draft picks or trades involving players on draft day? Because I think draft weekend there's going to be a lot of player for player movement. I think there'll be the occasional trade. I'll trade a player or I'll trade 2 picks to move up into the first round or second round. There are always those deals, but depends on what your definition. If you're saying like hockey deals, I think those are going to happen before the draft and they're going to happen after the draft.
I'm saying draft picks.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that always happens.
Yes, there's always guys. If there's somebody that a team likes, like let's say the Leafs, let's say Thomas Harley is sitting at 33 and the Leafs are at 56, they'll trade another pick to move up there or pick from next year with another team in that spot to get them. There'll be those kinds of trades will always happen. I do still think the Flyers will try and trade up into the top 10. Whether that includes picks, it probably would, and maybe it wouldn't include them from this year. So I still think that that's a possibility too.
Bruce Cassidy in comments this morning said that if the Bruins do not have Chára and Grzelcyk for Game 5, that it's possible that they'll play 7 defensemen. So that means it could mean Kampfer and Vakanainen, so they'd pick their spots.
And that's fine. I mean, that's you want to really hedge your bets that way. That's fine. I do think that might work. And
that probably means that a guy like Nordstrom would sit out. They go with 11 forwards, and a guy like Nordstrom would be the guy sitting out.
Yeah, probably. Look, if Chára is out and Grzelcyk is out, it's a 50-50 chance that the Bruins win the Stanley Cup because somebody asked in the chat room. So I'll tell you it's 50-50 at that point.
Mm-hmm.
It was greater otherwise.
I agree. But I know that teams can't play that high impact physical style for multiple games in a row.
Right.
But for St. Louis to win, they have to play closer to the way they played in Game 2 and in Game 4. If they sit back, if they're passive, if they allow Boston to use their speed game and play their sort of, antagonistic physical game, that's the game that they win. So I think for 2-3 games, essentially the Blues have to play with the throttle wide open.
Yeah.
That's the only way they're winning.
I mean, Esmir wrote, "This has been a surprisingly great Cup final." I guess he didn't watch or listen to anything we said before the Cup started, because we said it was going to be a great Cup final. Esmir, all right. But Esmir also asked, "Can the Bruins afford Charlie McAvoy?" My first answer is I don't care, but then I'm going to look into it. I have Cap Friendly up, and they've got $14 million in space now. So looking at who is going off the books, like Backus has 2 more years.
Right.
They'll probably try and move him out, but he's a 35-year-old. Like, that was a bad – well, it wasn't 35 when he signed, though. No, actually –
No, 32, I think.
32. That was just a bad deal, though. That was not a good contract. They'll try and do something with that. Could he be bought out? Maybe, but I don't think they have to, because they don't have a ton of major salaries. So what will happen?
I think they could, not that they're in a less advantageous position than Toronto is with Marleau, but you could take back a player who is making less, who has a longer term, or somebody who you think would be more useful that has a similar term. And I'm going back to Lucic.
Yeah.
But Lucic is 4 more years. That is the albatross around Ken Holland's neck. Lucic is 4 more years at 6.
But that 4 more years at 6 per is horrible.
Yeah.
When you saw last night, all he could do is cause a scuffle in the crease. He can't really do anything anymore.
Yeah.
In this NHL. So they may try and buy him out. They may try and trade him. I don't know if they'll be able to. But I will say this: the world's supposed to end in 2030, and Marchand comes off the books in 2025. So that's a pretty good indicator.
Who said the world's supposed to end in 2030?
Mike, you got to keep up with.
Who is this?
It was an article.
Nostradamus?
No, it's not Nostradamus. Anyhow, getting back to this though, McAvoy will be the highest paid player on the Bruins. He will, because Krejci makes 7.2.
No.
Oh
yeah, no. I think you passed her. Yeah, Krejci makes 7.2, and he's got what, 1 more year, I believe.
2 more years.
Yeah, but at least he's producing.
No, he's producing. I mean, is he worth the deal? No, but he's producing. But all I'm saying is McAvoy will get more than that. McAvoy will be in the probably 8, 8.5, 9 category for 7 or 8 years. That's the way it's going to go.
I'll say this right now. I mean, and I know probably 4 years down the line, and this won't look like a great deal, but one of the best deals in the NHL is Marchand making 6.125 for another 6 years. My goodness,
it's a good deal. It is. I mean, on Brad Marchand Appreciation Day, they're going to replay this now.
Well, they can retweet my tweet yesterday when I had a little rat eating cheese as a Brad Marchand update.
I will say this: Sean Corrali at 1.25 is a pretty good deal. It's not their signing, but wow, that's pretty valuable.
San Jose signing, correct?
Yes, and that's pretty valuable to have a guy like that on your roster for the next 2 years at 1.2 per 1.275. So that's kind of nice. So yeah, they're in pretty good shape cap wise. They don't even. Like Marcus Johansson, it'll be up in the air whether they re-sign him or not.
I don't think so, especially not the way he's playing right now. I mean, he
tailed off a bit.
No. I mean, he's playing really well in the playoffs.
I think he played well up to a point. I don't think he's done much in the last few games when they really need him.
I mean, overall, he's played really well. I think he's going to get from a number of teams. He's going to get a 3-year contract out of this playoff. The way he's performed.
I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of teams out there that like to waste money on free agent day. There are. Look, I like Marcus Johansson. I don't want to underestimate him, but like I said, I'm doing what have you done for me lately? Because if I don't win the cup, yes, he has 11 points in 19 games, but the last time I looked, I want to say he had 10 points in like 3 fewer games before that. Like he was doing better. Mm-hmm. Lately, it's he's got 4 goals. Like it's not like he's lighting it up. I can't. If I'm a team, I'm not giving him big money off of that. And I'm not talking about big money, but even 3 years, I don't even know if I want to give him 3 years.
Well, if it's 3 years, I think he's going to end up in like the 4 range, 4.5.
We'll see. I think he'll want more. Bill C, he says he'll bet McAvoy will get bridged. I bet you McAvoy won't want to be bridged.
No.
He's not going to. His camp will not accept that.
No, we're talking 8-year max deal. We're talking 7 to 7.5.
We're talking about your number one defenseman, and with Zdeno Chára on his last legs, next year or two, he'll be done.
I don't think the Bruins are at all interested in a bridge here. At all. I think they want the long term, and I think McAvoy will want it because he can get the big money then. He's gonna get paid.
So actually, Bill C said that Corrali was signed by the Bruins. If that was a really good signing.
Okay.
But I thought it was San Jose too. So, but I don't think, honestly, I don't think Johansson is still killing it.
Okay. I think
that's not going off.
I think there will be interested teams out there in free agency in a market that is not particularly deep. He's a quick forward with skill. He was that in Washington, and he was a cap casualty. He played well until he got hurt in New Jersey, and now he's been traded to Boston, and he's helped the Bruins in the playoffs. So I think he's not a front line player. He's probably a second line or third line winger. But I think a second or third line winger is going to get around $4 million, and I think he's earned some term.
In his last 4 games, he has 2 points, but he's had 3 games with no points at all. He's been a minus in a couple of them, and he hasn't had a lot of shots on goal either. To me, that's not killing it. No offense.
Okay. Next question.
Let's see. Next and last, because I probably –
okay. That's cool.
Hunter wants to know, with the Ducks head coach gig still open, do you like Dallas Eakins? Do you think it's important the job is filled prior to the draft? Thanks. I think Dallas Eakins, like Mike said, had the job. But then I think something has happened now since they've gotten into the Calder Cup where they don't love what they see. And now that seems to have slowed everything down. And now they're interviewing people where they weren't interviewing people for a while, right?
I mean, I think they know what they have in Eakins, and I think they're just making sure they're dotting their I's and they're crossing their T's and looking at other candidates before they take the plunge. I mean, the report came out a couple days ago that they were talking to Sandelin, who we mentioned.
I would take Sandelin over Eakins.
Right, but it's a question whether first of all, they like Sandelin. I mean, you'd assume that they do, since they want to interview him. They meant there was Lane Lambert and a couple other names mentioned. Can I guarantee that it's going to be Eakins? No, but based on the fact that his name has been out there for so long, I would think that he would be still the favorite, but it doesn't mean that somebody else isn't going to get chosen.
Bill C actually says that McAvoy hasn't done enough to earn the highest contract on the team. I have to tell you something. In this era, he does more than enough. He doesn't have to score 60 points as a defenseman to get that money anymore.
Well, I mean, that's sort of it's sort of a situation where it's sort of an optical illusion, because they were lucky that they got the long-term deals on Bergeron, Marchand, Pasternak.
Right.
At the time that they did. They got them in the midst of their prime for a favorable amount, and they got all 3 of them. Think of this. They got all 3 of them under $7 million a year.
Yeah.
All 3 of them. Your top 3 forwards on the best line in hockey. They got them all under $7 million. So, that gave them the freedom to spend not wisely on Backes, but spending money on McAvoy is wise, because he's arguably your future number 1 defenseman. So I honestly, I have no problem making.
Maybe they'll get him for 8, but he's probably going to make 8.
Yeah, I mean, if they get him at, he's 21 going on 22 or 22 years old right now.
Right.
You get him on an 8-year deal, that's till 30. It's all prime. He may not. The thing is, he may not want 8. He may want 6, so he can turn free agent at 28 in his prime, and then you may pay him a little bit less. Maybe you pay him 7 or 7.5. 7.5 is what Ekblad's making.
Yeah, we're gonna go. Last word's gonna go to Cam, who is our captain obvious of the chat room, and says whoever wins Game 5 will win the Stanley Cup. Thanks, Cam.
Thank you very much. Now, could you give me some lottery picks? The Mega Million is $475 million today.
I might play it.
There you go. $10.
I play it and I win it. I could own this crappy show.
Do you have $5 in your pocket? You can own this crappy show. For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.